I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar with Addo Technology and Nexenta. I'm Michelle Seifert, International Sales Executive for Addo. I'd like to talk a little bit about the webinar and what you'll learn. We'll learn how a stretch cluster provides the high availability and data mobility needed to load balance on-site or between two sites. We'll learn how to build your own stretch cluster solution using the Nexenta store and the Addo storage controller. And we'll learn how the Addo Nexenta solution gives data center managers the ability to protect business critical applications and eliminate the risk of data loss. So at this point, I'm going to introduce both our presenters. On the Addo Technology side, we have Jim Uren, the Addo Technology Storage Controller Product Manager. And when we get to the Nexenta side, we will be introducing Christian Browers, the Regional Sales Manager for Central Europe of Nexenta. So Jim, I'll pass this over to you.
Thank you, Michelle. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about business continuity and how a stretch cluster can help with business continuity. Now, you see the bullets up on the slides here, mainly talking about losing access to IT infrastructures. If you lose day-to-day access to day-to-day operations, you can cease function if all access data is being lost. And if a production site does have downtime, this equates to lost orders and revenue and may tarnish your business reputation. So now, on the other side of the coin, if it's a medical or financial record type company, if you're a bank or a hospital, if records are lost, this could actually result in litigation, which could lead to significant legal expenses. Business continuity is a solution that can solve problems that can address issues with downtime and lost data. Now, a stretch cluster is basically clusters that are configured with host systems that replicate data either synchronously at the same time or asynchronously, where the data doesn't get updated immediately but over time. So there's two different copies at two different sites of the same data. Now, if there's a total site disruption, data services will continue at the other site, maintaining access for business continuity. This means that all users can access the second site or the failover site if the first site fails. These sites don't have to be any specific distance apart. They can be close together or they can be across a metro region. Now, some of the benefits of a stretch cluster as a business continuity solution is that you have zero planned and unplanned downtime. What this means is if you have maintenance going on, you can take a system down and the other side of the stretch cluster, the second site, will take over and allow people to access the data that is on your servers and storage. If it's unplanned downtime, like a natural disaster, the same thing will happen, meaning the access on the other site, the data won't be lost, neither will the access. It allows workload mobility, allowing people to use either sets of the cluster on either site to make sure that they have good performance, if you will, making sure that there's no lag, no waiting for files. And this load balancing between sites can also let users, the IT department, manage where the users access the storage. So if one site is getting hit with a lot of user requests for data, they can spread this out over both sites, making sure that the data is not, the servers are not being overburdened. Enhanced downtime avoidance I talked about previously a little bit, which is making sure that there is no downtime. One of the main benefits of stretch clusters is having very little or no downtime. This is for people who really need 24/7 access to data for increased on-site availability. Now, the disaster avoidance is another thing. So if there is a disaster coming, if there is a problem at one of the sites that are spread across the metro area, the IT department can, for instance, vMotion all the virtual machines off site A to site B, because if that site's going down, if there's a flood, an earthquake, a problem on that site, that'll also allow them to save and protect their data. The last thing would be disaster recovery. So if a disaster actually did hit, you can recover all your data from that second site to your primary site once everything's back up and running. Now, where can they be used? We talked about being able to use it across a metropolitan area. And this is primarily for disaster recovery. That's been the traditional thought. For disaster recovery, if you have two separate sites over a long area, being able to protect your data in the event of a single site disaster. This will protect digital, financial, medical, or business assets at a second site to make sure that you have continuity in your business. Now, a lot of people also use it not just for a disaster recovery solution, they use it for the downtime avoidance solution. They may use it on the same campus or facility, could be 100 or 200 or 300 meters apart, or maybe a kilometer apart on site. Now this allows them to maintain 24/7 uptime access to files with very high resiliency. They're not going to lose data as long as both sites are up and running. It'll keep a production site, for instance, running nonstop. So if a production site that's doing manufacturing, for instance, needs to have access 24/7 while they're maintaining their lines, creating products, this is the solution they're going to use to make sure that happens. And it also has another benefit, a high-performance medium to migrate virtual machines. So what they can use it on the same site for is if VMware needs to do a vMotion, move a virtual machine, migrate a user, provision new VMs, they can do this over the stretch cluster that's on site and be able to make sure they have a very high efficient, high performance medium to do this. Now, some of the considerations for stretch clusters, mission critical applications are typically the primary focus. Usually people that aren't using some sort of a business continuity solution that may have virtual applications today, they're using the historical legacy type application, if you will. Now they're virtualizing these new mission critical applications and trying to be able to protect them and making sure they're up and running as much as possible. Multiple data centers have to exist. It's either going to be on campus in the same building or across a metropolitan area. There needs to be connectivity between sites. Fiber channel connectivity or dark fiber connectivity between the sites is typical. It needs very small latency. So if you're going to use a stretch cluster to do synchronous writes between sites, the latency has to be very, very low, sub 5 milliseconds of latency, to make sure those writes happen at both sites at the same time, so you don't lose even a bit of data in case of a problem with one of the sites. There's also going to be storage heads at each site. These are going to be servers running Nexenta Store software. There's going to be storage at each site. You can use off-the-shelf JBODs from Dell and Supermicro that attach to Addo storage controllers to provide fiber channel connectivity. So our solution altogether, the Nexenta Metro HA Stretch Cluster, using Nexenta software, Nexenta Store with the Metro HA plugin, ends up providing high availability, data protection, replication, and snapshots, a lot of high-end features. There's more than that. Christian will talk more about the software. Then the Addo storage controller piece enables this software to have high bandwidth, low latency synchronous connections between sites, maintaining that ability to do synchronous writes to 2 locations at the same time. So our solution consists of 2 different products. We have a cost-effective SAN connectivity product, the Addo 6500 storage controller, which features 8 gig fiber channel and 6 gig SAS. So this allows you to connect SAS JBODs to a fiber channel network. You're not buying a fiber channel JBOD since they really don't exist, or a more expensive fiber channel piece of storage hardware to enable your stretch cluster. Our next product, which is just going under certification, is the 7500 storage controller. This product is about 10 times the performance of the 6500. This is mainly engineered for high performance flash SSD applications. Installed in pairs, this product gets over 1 million 4K IOPS with very high throughput, allowing the performance needed as more SSDs get integrated into IT infrastructures. SSDs are really taking over more than expected with a cost-effective solution as hard drives start to slip more and more. Don't think that hard drives are going away. Hard drives are going to be here for quite a long time. But as more and more flash gets involved into IT data centers, Nexenta and Addo are prepared for those changes in the market. So what does one of our storage controllers do? So at the low level, it basically adds fiber channel to SAS JBODs, SSD flash boxes, and RAID arrays. It is a built-in target mode. It's a solid state appliance. So basically, you just plug and play. You plug in power, you plug in SAS connections, you plug in fiber channel connections, and you're good to go. Everything's burned in at the factory. There's no software to load. There's nothing that you have to do other than configure it for your network and make sure it's plugged into your storage head and your storage. It does add some advanced diagnostic and management capabilities, being able to see what's going on with your storage, being able to report that back up to Nexenta Store software, and also monitor performance and access, seeing what's going on with your performance and is there a bottleneck somewhere. It's very open technology, it's modular, doesn't change any of the data on the disks, it just fits in with the architecture. And this is how the stretch cluster solution will look. There's two different ways we can do this. The Metro HA solution with 4 of our controllers, 4 of our bridges, will look something like this. You see on the left side, there's a server, Nexenta Store head, switches, some storage controllers, and storage, JBOD storage under Site B underneath that. On the right side, it's exactly the mirror of the left side of the diagram. So in 2 separate sites, whether they're meters apart or kilometers apart, you have a perfect copy of all the data on both sites. So in the event of a failure, one site will be able to take over. And when you're using 4 of our controllers, you have few points of failure. There's no single point of failure. If one of the switches go down on one site or one of the controllers go down, the other controller or switch takes over. If everything goes down on that site, the whole other site takes over. The whole infrastructure gets failed over to the second site in the event of a single site failure. Another way to do this, you can actually do this with 2 different bridges. So you can have 1 bridge per site, 1 switch, 1 JBOD per site. This will allow for more economical installs, so you can actually have a smaller configuration. When you're doing this, though, you have a few things to consider. In the 2-bridge solution, you do have 1 bridge per site. It is less expensive and an easier installation, but then you do have a single point of failure per site. This may not be acceptable for some organizations, but for others it may be absolutely fine, because if the single site does fail over, you do have a point of failure addressing this by failing over to the second site, so you still will have access to data. With the 4-bridge solution, there's high availability at both sites, so there really is no single point of failure. You'll have increased performance, and the solution, as a con for this solution, will be it costs a little bit more to do this. You have much more resiliency in the solution. Now I'll hand it over to Christian for the remainder of our webinar.
Thanks. Awesome. Will you turn the pages, or will you hand over the presentation modus?
Let's see, Michelle.
So Nexenta is a 100% software company. So we're focusing on the software piece by itself. So what VMware did in the past for software-defined compute and memory on the server side is what we're doing on the hardware side. We're taking any hardware from any vendor. We have reference architecture that are pre-qualified, and reference plus architecture where we can play around with a little bit more hardware. We can cover basically 99% of all the workloads that are out there, from a scale-up typical file environment to a unified file and block environment to pure block environment to an object environment. We're covering these areas with 2 different platforms on a 1 single management framework. And we're basically focusing on disrupting the market and making the storage market transparent for the end user. So, Michelle, if you can confirm that you're now seeing the next page, that would be awesome. So what that means is that if you're buying storage as of today, storage vendors or the storage mafia will try to sell you hardware that is very overpriced. So there are only 2 storage vendors out there, or two disk manufacturers out there that are leading the world market, Western Digital and Seagate. If you buy a disk from a storage vendor, you pay up to close to 90% more than you should. So if we're comparing a traditional storage disk, which is priced at $2,000, and you buy the same identical disk drive from a distributor that you maintain by yourself, there is a gap of 87%. That are numbers that I just pulled yesterday from a web shop. So there is a significant difference between add-on on enterprise hardware, but technically it's the same. So what we're providing is the software that runs on top and give you the transparency and the insight in the hardware that you're buying, and the opportunity to choose which hardware fits the best to you. Either sticking around with an A brand like Dell, Lenovo, HP, where you have integrated support, or if you want to challenge the price, switching to another vendor, or going for, especially in hosting environments, going for the more aggressive priced hardware when you're maintaining the support by yourself, swapping this around. As I said earlier, we have two platforms. Nexenta Store, that's where we are providing our Metro HA, Nexenta Edge, which is focused around scale-out block and object storage. And both are managed under one main framework called Nexenta Fusion. So Nexenta Store is scale-up storage, which means that we have a controller on top. The controller are accessing all the available disks. And in case of a failover, the second controller takes over the disks and provides you with the I/O. Scale-up storage is the best for traditional environments like databases, virtual machines, and other stuff. In comparison, Nexenta Edge would be used for scale-out environments like when you're developing a platform like Facebook. There, you're running into limits of a scale-up storage pretty quickly because the main purpose of scale-out is bandwidth. However, the most environments that are out there are typical scale-up environments where you have your CRM system, your virtual machines. With Nexenta Store, you can choose between file and block access, or use both at the same time. So, for example, providing fiber channel to your hypervisor hosts and file service at the same time to your end users for file access. Nexenta Store is two controller active cluster, and with Atto we're stretching them across two different data center for Metro availability. So when we're talking about Metro HA, it's not rocket science, it's nothing fancy. It's basically all the customers that are out there that are using high availability from Nexenta today are using the same code, the same platform, the same environment. What we're doing with Metro HA, we're just doubling the disks in the back end so that we can have a pair of copy in the second data center and stretching the controller onto different data center or fireproofed rooms, for example. One of the big benefits of this design is that we are accessing the same disks or all the disks all the time. It's a concept called VDEF. So we're taking the disks in the back end and creating a virtual device. And multiple virtual devices will be grouped in a pool that is the capacity that you're managing. Traditional storage systems are more working with a replication technique. So if we're taking a traditional implementation on top, then you have overall 28 disks. You have 14 on the left-hand side, 14 on the right-hand side. And if you're going for mirrored RAID DP or mirrored RAID 6 or something like that, then you have 12 disks on the left-hand side where you can read from to or for the parity. And whenever you're accessing the data, you're only accessing half of the available disks, a little bit less than half of the disks. With Nexenta and Atto, Atto is presenting all the back-end disks as a fiber channel target to us. We're grouping them together in VDEFs and an active pool, and we read from all the disks. They are basically a four-way mirror, all the VDEFs, and that gives you the read performance of all the 28 disks. Well, how does that translate into real benefit? So traditional storage vendors are setting up the Metro HA in a very expensive way. So let's strip off all the margin that they're putting on top, taking just the raw hardware pricing and calculate on that. So if you're going with a mirrored rate DP, you would normally go with something like a 10K or 15K drive to have decent performance from an iOS perspective. And I used a very affordable disk drive, a 10K 1.2 terabyte drive. In comparison with Nexenta, because we're accessing all the disks at the same time for read, we can go with cheap nearline disk drives. So I picked a 2 terabyte drive with 7K that delivers 80 IOPS. Because 10K and 15K drives are way more expensive to manufacture, they have higher pricing per unit. So if we're now comparing the net usable capacity, we designed 2 environments with 28 disks, both at around 14 terabyte of net usable capacity. Now, if we're calculating up the net read IOPS, so the net usable disks that are available for random reads, with mirrored rate DP or with a mirrored Metro HA based on replication, you're ending up at a way higher price, so more than double the price just on the disk drives, and at the same time with less performance. So Nexenta performs at 149% of the performance for half the price at the same net usable capacity because of the design we set up the pool and backend. On top of that, Nexenta is using very clever caching on top of that. So the disk calculation is just for the raw random read backend performance. And now what we're doing on top of that, we're using RAM in the controller to accelerate any incoming and outgoing IOs. And we're using SSDs as a second layer caching. So what happens is, if you're writing to a Metro HA, we're storing all the IOs in RAM, and at the same time we're writing them to SSDs. In the SSDs, we're collecting IOs for multiple seconds before we organize them in big chunks and write them as sequential IOs to the backend. So one thing to keep in mind with Nexenta is that all write IOs are cached and not going directly to the disks. And most of the IOs, so we're talking about worldwide in an area between 82 to 87% of our customer, or the IOs in our customer base, we're caching on the read side 82 to 87%. So the HDDs are just for a fraction of the IOs. So if you have 10,000 backend IOs, you can calculate that you're running up to 100,000 IOPS that you can run against the system. That's enormous what we're doing with the caching technology. And why are we doing that? Because each and every technology is best in a price per whatever it was designed for. So RAM is the fastest medium, and you can have for a couple $100 a million IOs. At the same time, you can have in the HDDs very affordable, big capacity with nearline drives, and we're leveraging the technology for the best purpose. The other thing, in comparison to traditional storage vendors, is that Nexenta is licensing on a perpetual model. So we're hardware independent. You can transfer it from any vendor to any vendor. You're not bound by the hardware decisions that you're making today. You can always upgrade to a newer model, newer technology, different vendor. Also, Nexenta comes with all-in licenses. So all the basic functionality and all the storage technology like snapshots, clones, replication, different protocols, everything is part of the base license. The only thing that we're charging extra for is Metro HA, which is the same price as high availability, and fiber channel to the front end. Other than that, deduplication or compression, data reduction, snapshots, all these tools are part of the base license. Traditional vendors try to rip you off and always charge extra money for all additional features. We don't think that that is fair, so we came up with our licensing model that is as transparent as possible to make it as bulletproof as possible for your investment. The number of customers proves that they're happy with what we're doing across the world or different segments and industries. Reach out to your local Nexenta team to get you in contact with the local contacts in your particular country, so where we can come up with the case studies that fit best to you. There's also additional material on Atto's website as well as Nexenta's website with our solution briefs and reference architecture and our hardware compatibility list, where you can double check what hardware fits the best or is already pre-certified. So, Michelle.
Yes, thank you. Yep, thank you, Christian and Jim, both for going through that presentation for us. So I'd like to take a moment real quick and ask if anyone has any questions at this time. You can type them in, and we'll spend a few minutes just reviewing them. So I guess we'll pause for a quick moment here and let everyone type in their information. All right, well, I actually have one pretty quick that I guess I'll start on. I'm not sure, Jim or Christian, which of you will respond to this, but I'll read it. This customer is asking, does the new Nexenta Store version 5.0 support Metro HA?
So Metro HA at the moment is in QA testing on version 5 and is forecasted for Q1 to be enabled as part of a patch in version 5.02.
Okay.
So far, to clarify on that, every customer can roll out the Metro HA in version 4 that we're shipping at the moment and is QA tested, and is able to upgrade to version 5 as soon as we have the certification done, and it's included in our maintenance.
Perfect. Also, can the Extreme Core 7500 be combined with the Atto Fiber Bridge, the 6500, and Metro HA installations?
No, this is Jim, product manager at Atto. If you use the two different controllers at the same time, we had this question before, if I can upgrade one of my sites with a 6500 that has a 6500 currently to a 7500 and do the other one later. If you did that, there's two different performance footprints. So you will not see any benefit of the 7500 in an installation when you're combining it with the 6500. The performance would basically be limited to the slowest component, which would be the 6500 in that case. And it would bottle up the capabilities of the 7500. It's recommended and I think only supported to install as the upgrade comes available in pairs.
Okay, and then I guess we have time for one more question. Is there any burn-in or assembly needed for Extreme Core or Fiber Bridge products?
And no, I went into this a little bit in the webinar. The controllers are assembled as a solid-state product. They're burnt in and tested at the factory. So these things, when they get to you and you unbox them, you unbox a 1U controller, you plug into power, it has dual power supplies, you plug it into the fiber channel and SAS connections from the server, and you're basically turn it on and it's good to go. It takes about 60 seconds to boot up, and there's no boot burn-in required. You don't have to really do much with it at all.
All right, I think that's all we have time for. There are a few other questions if anyone else has. Please feel free to contact myself via Atto Technology or Christian of Nexenta, and we'll be happy to take care of every question that you have. This has been a recorded webinar, so will be available on the Addo and Nexenta websites, and we can email it out to you as well. I'd like to say thank you to everyone and have a great day.